Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're going to be having a look at the lineups that I'm mainly going to be using for the Operation Summer event. One of the key things I would say is it's nice to diversify when it comes to your lineups. Instead of playing the same thing for pretty much straight a month, it's nice to have a bunch of different ones. So if you get annoyed at playing one, or maybe a bunch of players shift to play another certain lineup, you're able to counter it with a different one. Before we get into this video though, I do want to mention one thing. The fact is, when it comes to streaming on Twitch, I have like this tech points thing, and if you get enough tech points, you're able to actually pick a skin, like a user skin, for me to put on. So you might see some very weird skins across the board, such as my Jumbo skin, and I just want to say this is the community fault, not mine. So let's get into it. The first thing we're going to be focusing on is naval, and the lineups I'm going to be using for that. The first one is going to be mainly the one I use for, I'd say, probably 80 to 90% of it, because I find it really fun, and that is the American PT boat lineup at 3.0. The reason why this lineup is really fun is because it stays away, the majority of the time, away from destroyers, because a lot of meta destroyers are 4-3, and also it has access to a ton of torpedoes, access to a ton of guns, and also a pretty cool premium, the 80-footer PT-556, which has, of course, the quad 20mm on the back and the Thunderbolt. All of these machines are designed to get close to the action, smash up the enemy, and just have a little bit of fun with it. And you can, if you want, replace the PT-556 if you don't have it with the PT-200, which is right here. You could throw in the 314 if you wanted as well, and it would have like the same effect. You know, it's still a very, very good lineup. So the reason why we run this, as I said, is to get a ton of damage with the amount of guns that are on this thing. The 40mm are some of the nicest guns in naval forces because they have range, they have a lot of ammunition, and they have a lot of damage as well. They're just kind of like the trifecta of really fun. And also, these machines have a lot of speed, so you can get between capture points really quickly, you can reposition really well. They also have access to stuff like artillery, and as I said, stuff like torpedoes. The reason why I play Naval Arcade is because it's faster, and also because you can reload torpedoes, so therefore you can put them in areas such as, you know, in like choke points and stuff like that, to make sure that you can take out enemies. And if you use them correctly, then you should easily get those 3 torpedo kills really quickly. These 3 machines are backed up by the Hellcat and also the A36. Now the Hellcat is a rank 2, and so is the A36, so you have to make sure to get back. Actually, no, it doesn't matter, because in naval rank 2s count, sorry. So the reason why I take these is, first of all, the Hellcat does have a torpedo, so you can use the torpedo if you want. I would say try and get the torpedo kills with the PT boats though, and use the bombs and the rockets on the Hellcat to try and do as much damage as possible. Basically, what you want to do is you want to spawn, if it's a short distance map, you want to spawn in something like this, rat-a-tat with the 20, fire off the torpedoes, and then if you die but you've got a ton of points, get in a plane such as either the A36 or the Hellcat, and absolutely drum the ever-living hell out of the enemy with stuff like 50 cals, and then once you die in them, get back into the boats and secure the victory. That's pretty much what I do in these vehicles. When it comes to Germany, the naval stuff that I'm thinking of playing, but I'll probably miss out on, is once again those Mesa 4-3 destroyers. The reason why it is good to go into 4-3 and below is so you stay out of that top BR range of 5.7 to 4.7, because you don't want to get crucified by 5.7 cruisers. It's not very fun when you're in a destroyer, so stick to 4-3 and below. You can use your torpedoes, you can get a ton of damage with the 127s which are on these machines, and if you want another lineup which works really well, well. You can take the Lect and the S.U.M.M.E.R and also the AFD-1, and alongside it, if you want to get the torpedo kills as well, you can bring the H6, and the reason why you bring the H6 because it has 2 torpedoes, so you can actually torpedo 2 targets with the H6, and remember, you only need 3 kills, so taking that, and then something else, probably a BF-110 with it if you can, or something a little bit lower, you could actually make a really nice 2-7 lineup for the Germans. For other nations, I would say if you want to focus on trying to get torpedo kills and also trying to get stuff such as a little bit more damage, the Japanese is definitely the way to go. Once again, sticking to that 4-3 idea, because you don't want to go up against some kind of crazy machines, and I don't know why I have these planes in. I was probably dealing with them with something else, but yeah, you don't want destroyers once again against light cruisers. You want to get down tiered, or you want to play at your own tier, and the thing about these Japanese destroyers is they can do a ton of damage, not just because their guns do a lot of damage, even though they have quite a low rate of fire. Their torpedoes are the best in the game. The torpedoes from stuff like the Udachi, the Ayanami, and the Yugamo, and if you don't have the Udachi, you can just put in the Mitsuki. It's definitely not as good, but yeah, it can be there. I suppose if you have the Isuzu, you can stick that in as well, so you can get some torpedoes, but these torpedoes have the longest range in game, as you can see, 20 kilometers. They are incredibly fast, and you get an absolute metric ton of them. This machine gets 16 of them, so you can just plonk them down at the start of a battle and create 2 layers of them, because the way it works is on stuff like the Yugamo, you actually have a reload of the torpedoes, so you have 8 that you fire and then 8 again, and then you reload them on top of that because of arcade, so you just create a barrage, a layer of torpedoes to attack the enemy at, and you just keep doing it with these, and every so often, after like 2 or 3 or 5 minutes of launching the torpedoes, you'll just randomly get kills, because, you know, you're torpedoing like the enemy spawn, or you're torpedoing, you know, enemy AI and stuff, and all of that, if you like destroy a player ship with a torpedo, that counts as a lot of damage towards your damage thing, so yeah, and it'll also count towards your torpedo thing. So overall, if you want to get torpedo kills, go Japanese. Those are the naval lineups I'll be using, you know, pretty simple, nothing crazy about that. Moving on to ground and air, remember, I do ground and air together. I do them in ground realistic, and also if I don't finish them off, normally what happens is if I finished off the tank challenge first, I'll be pretty close to doing the air challenge, but what I'll do is, as I said in the other video, is I focus on getting the kills and getting the assists. If I don't get them in time and I finished off the tank challenge, then what I do is I switch to my arcade lineup and I just go bombing. I just go and smash, you know, the 10 tons in normally about 1 game, and the way that I do it is what you see right here. This lineup of the PB4Y, the B-17s, the B-24, and of course the creme de la creme, the B-29 on top of it. Normally this is what I use to actually be able to spade the B-29, just because, you know, I don't normally use it too much, because I think it's kind of a very oppressive vehicle. And yeah, you don't have to worry too much about SL costs, because the repair costs are very low in arcade, and you basically just climb to the heavens and just bomb from up high. If you're able to survive in a B-29 and destroy all the bases in the airfield in arcade, you can easily be able to get the 10 tonnage of bombs in 1 battle. You can see here that each of these bombs has 119 kgs, so if all 40 of them hit the target, so 40 times 100, that's what, 4,000, plus like the extra 20, that's probably what, about like 5,000 worth of TNT, so just 2 bombing runs can get you the 10 tons. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy, and that is why, you know, this lineup you go for, if you're trying to do the tonnage stuff. So, what do I do when I'm not doing the tonnage stuff? Well, it's jumbo time. It's always jumbo time. The jumbo has been, it has been increased in BR many different times. And even though it's been increased in BR many different times, it is still an incredibly good vehicle. And luckily, I have a Cobra King, so we don't have to look at that skin. Now, the thing is, if you don't have the Cobra King, and you still want to run this lineup, you are able to basically replace the Cobra King with either the M6A1 or something like the 76 Sherman. I would say the 76 Sherman, and have a bit of fun with it. And basically what you do is you use the jumbos as a shield to be able to get points in, because you can ricochet a lot of shots off the front of it. The gun is not as powerful, obviously, since it used to be a monster at 4.7 and now it's at 5.3. You still have access to a very good APC-BC round and also APCR. You're just going to have to understand how to use them a little bit better. If you get in a down tier, you stomp in these things. The other thing to also mention is, because you'll ricochet a lot of shots, because you'll be able to take out a lot of targets with it, such as panthers and tigers, you will, the idea is to get into one of these and then move forward with the planes. Use the planes to be able to be CAS and to win the battle. So you take something like the 2000s and 1500 on the P47, this should guarantee you 2 kills when you are flying around. Then you take the 1000s on the P51, this should guarantee you 1 kill when you go and bomb something. And then after that, you use your machine guns to machine gun enemies on the ground, or as an superiority fighter to take out enemy fighters, and then you use that, to gain assists and to gain kills and to get your 4s. It's as simple as that. It's a really easy lineup to use, really fun to use as well, and even with like the nerfs technically with the BRs, it's not too bad. The other lineup you can run is the 5.7 one, which is of course the Hellcat lineup. And this one has actually got a few buffs as of late, and the buffs that it's got is the M36. So the M36 has been lowered in BR, and what that pretty much means is that you are able to use these machines really effectively. That 90mm will just knock out anything in its path, but it is lightly armored, so you do have to be a bit careful of that. As you can see, you can run the P47M and the AU1 with this, both very competent aircraft, but if you don't have these aircraft, you can still run some great ones. So you can still run the P51s just out of the normal tech tree. They're easily good enough. The 82 is a monster in ground realistics, so is the Mauler. The Mauler might be even better. Then you can even run the P47 Thunderbolt if you want to, and then if you have the P59, stick that in as an air superiority fighter and you'll win every time. So yeah, you have the overall firepower of the M36, you have the speed of the M18, so you can get to caps, get them quickly, maybe get 1 or 2 kills, and then get in your planes and dominate the match. That's basically what you're looking to do. And then as a third option, you have the 76, which is kind of like the overall pretty good vehicle. So yeah, those are the lineups I'm going to be using for the US. When it comes to Germany, I'm going to be using my premium lineup because I have everything spaded around this BR, but I'll show you a tech tree equivalent to this lineup. One thing to actually talk about is if you want to do the 10-ton bomb strat thing, you can actually do it with Germany. You have the ME264, you have the HE177, sorry, you have the JU188, and if you have the JU288, you can put that in too. So it is possible. So you can see this is the lineup that I'm going to be running for ground. You got the Fairy Tiger, you got the Panzerbefehlswagen 6P, just the up-armored Tiger with more armor on the front, so it's more survivable. A little bit slower turret and a little bit slower overall, but it's fine, it's got a good reverse. And then Ursad's M10, which is of course the best Panther in the game. So having all of these at 5.7 is an incredibly strong lineup. You have a lot of mobility, you are able to run around the place. The only thing you've got to be careful of is if a ton of people are running Hellcats, you're going to have to play much more defensively than you used to, because you're going to just, once you kill 1, 2 more spawn. It's like a bloody Hydra. So you got to be careful. When it comes to the planes as well, you can run other options. So the other options are stuff like the K4 if you want an air superiority fighter. You have, of course, the 188 you can bring in as a pretty good frontline bomber. You can bring in the D9 or the D12, or you can bring in stuff like the DO335s if you are confident in them. I wouldn't personally bring in the 335s unless you have the premium one with the 30s, because that thing shreds tanks really, really well. And if you want to go a full non-premium lineup with this one, what you do is you switch to 5-3 and you go Tiger H1, Panther D, Panzer 470. This is a really strong lineup right now because they just put down the Panther D. The Panther D is a good vehicle. The only issue it has is its turret traverse and its reverse in general, and also its shot trap. But you can negate all of these things by just playing a little bit more defensively, which you're going to have to do anyway, because as I said, American teams are going to run around like crazy. So yeah, Tiger 1, Panther D, Panzer 470, really nice lineup. Or you can go to 5-7 with the Panther A, the Tiger E, and also maybe the Oswin 2 if you want to throw that one in. So there are these options. There's also the Waffenträger, but I'd stay away from that. As we talked about, there's going to be a lot of CAS running around, and they're just going to annihilate you. So don't bother about that. For the Soviets, the standard lineup, which I'm probably going to use, is the 4-3-1, which is obviously the T-34-57, the Su-85, and the KV-1 ZIS. You get a little bit of everything with this lineup. So with the T-34-57, you get a good gun, good mobility, not a ton of damage with the gun though, and a lack of gun depression. The Su-85, if you get up to that gun, will just still wreck everything in-house. The KV-1 ZIS-5 gives you armor in a down tier and at your tier, and the gun is good enough to be able to deal with other targets. The Yak-9T also gives you a ground pounding option, which you don't normally get from other tech trees. That NS-37mm is really good at popping stuff like engines on tanks and setting them on fire. So with 3 good shots, because normally when you fire a Yak-9T, it's normally accurate for the first like 3 or 4 shells, and then it goes all over the place, which is why you should fire it in short bursts. And as I said, it can be used as a ground attacker, but also it is a pretty handy fighter at the same time because of the fact it has the 12.7 and the 37mm in tandem. It's not going to be the best though. If you want a better, if you basically want a better if you want a better air superiority fighter, there are other options in the tree for you, such as stuff like, I suppose maybe the Yak-3, but the Yak-9U really stands out as something to be able to use in that role. But I would take the Yak-9T and the Yak-9K just to have a bit of fun with. The Yak-9K is kind of there just as an extra thing. You probably won't use it, so it'll be completely fine. The other lineup I might use is the 5.7 gold one, but this is definitely not one that a ton of people are gonna have. So you can see we have the T5, the KV-220, the Fong Kong T-34. These are all event vehicles from the past, and yeah, it's a pretty sweet lineup along with the Yak-3T as well, because the Yak-3T has access to the N37 37mm, which is the slightly improved 37, and it still has access to API-T. So yeah, I've got to say, I really enjoy using this lineup, but as I said, I understand most people don't have stuff like the KV-220, which is why, I'm not going to prioritize it too much. With Britain, there is really only a few lineups that I look for to use in this, and the lineups are basically stuff which they're really dominant at. So the 6-7 lineup cannot be rivaled when it comes to ground for Britain. They have an incredible 6-7 lineup, which comprises of the Centurion Mark III, the FE-4202, and the Carnarvon. All of these vehicles are great. They all have stabilizers. They all have access to really good AP and also APDS. They also have smoke grenades for defense, and they also have pretty good traverses. The only issue is the 202, which is really slow in reverse. So once you get into a situation, you've got to make sure to dominate the situation. Also, be careful of these machines, because you may think, oh, they're pretty tough, they have decent armor, but what you find out is that's really not the case because of one specific reason. A lot of people will just shoot you here and it'll go through the top and take out your whole turret. So you got to be careful about that. The other thing to mention is when it comes to aircraft, if you are playing Britain, you will have to play a much more air superiority role. There aren't a ton of vehicles for Britain around this BR which actually have really good bomb ordnance, which are useful in ground realistic. The Hornet kind of has some with the 2,000 pounders, so you can get a nice kill there, and then use it once again as an air superiority fighter. Or, you know, maybe if you have the Wyvern about, you can bring that up to 6-7 and have a bit of fun with it. But the main ones that you're going to run, in my opinion, would be the Spitfires. And the reason why you bring the Spitfires is because of the fact that these vehicles are really good air superiority fighters. You can easily take out, you know, 4 aircraft with these and make sure to dominate the game from the point of view of the air. And maybe try and get an assist as well by hitting ground targets and stuff with them. That can work as well. The other lineup to also think about is the 7-7 lineup, which is the S.U.M.M.E.R 10, the Vickers MBT, but also the Crown Jewel, which I'm guessing I took out because I spaded it, was the Conch. So the Conch is a very underrated vehicle. It has incredibly good stuff such as, you know, the frontal armor on it and also the upgrade package on it. Its gun is really fun as well, and it keeps getting buffed when it comes to its reload, which is really nice. And it's just a really satisfying tank to play, especially when everybody's running around with Heat FS. Just having that extra layer of stuff like ERA and things like that, well, not really ERA, but, you know, just extra spaced armor on the top of it is just really, really nice, because you shrug off leopard shells and then you turn the gun and bonk, you know, you annihilate them. The other thing is the Vampire FB5 is a very useful plane when it comes to ground RB, because of the fact that it has the 1,000 pounder ordnance, and when it comes to the secondary plane that you can run, it's kind of up to you. You know, you have quite a lot of jets around this BR that you can run with. The British, you could run the Sea Venom if you want. The Meteor F3 is a really good air superiority fighter, probably one of the best in the game when it comes to ground RB, so there's also that option. But yeah, the Vampire in general, with its loadouts, you're able to do a ton of damage with the bombs, and then once again switch to air superiority role, which is great. The only lineup for ground that I'll probably use for the Japanese, and this is definitely a probable, is the 471. And the reason for this is because you're able to bring along the B7A2. It has an 800 kilo bomb, which is really nice, so you can just bring that in and, you know, twat people with it. It's kind of as simple as that. You can absolutely annihilate other planes as well with the 20mm the B7A2 has, and also on top of that you have a pretty cool ground lineup. You know, the Cheeto and the Cheeto Late, they have very, very powerful guns on them, and will definitely, you know, do yourself really well. And then you have the Chinu 2, if you have that as a premium to be able to back them up. The Chinu 2 has always been a premium, which has had a lower BR than it kind of deserves, mainly because of its slow engine, but it's got good gun depression, it has a good reload. If you pen with the gun, the round will kill whatever you've hit, because it has so much explosive filler in it. The 75mm Type 2 Model 2 gun is just really, really crisp to use. If you don't have the Chinu 2, you can throw in the Chaffee as well, and that's, you know, is completely fine. The Chinese, I will be using the 5-7 lineup, because you get a little bit of mix of everything. You know, you get two T-34-85s, which are very strong meta vehicles. You know, they have very good 85s on them, good speed behind them, and the armor can be kind of trolley at times. And the creme de la creme is the Hellcat that you have right here. The Hellcat, with its 5.7 BR, it's one of the only things that can counter effectively stuff like other American Hellcats, unless you have like an R3, which you've up-tiered. So what it basically means that you can run around and you can actually challenge the American teams on their speed, which is something a lot of other nations can't do. Sometimes you do get left out in the dust though, because there's only one of you and about 10 of them. But if you play it correctly, you can do really well. And the idea is you spawn in this first, you get a cap, you get a kill, and then with that, you switch over to the P51K, which is obviously very similar to the D variant from the American tree. You do exactly what you do in the American tree, you drop the bombs on something, and then you go into air superiority mode and also to tag ground units mode to try and get assists. And then after you've died in that, you get back in the T-34-85s and you try and win. That's pretty much the basic lineup. The other thing is all of these vehicles are insanely cheap to repair, apart from the P-51, but you'll make the money back while playing the ground units. Looking at Italy, because of a bunch of BR changes, there isn't really anything that stands out as kind of fun to use, apart from maybe the 3.7 lineup. I know a lot of people are going to run around in the R3 T20. I hate that Hellspawn. It's a disgusting vehicle, and therefore I won't promote it, but you can definitely run it with the M4A4 on the Chaffee with an interesting lineup and some aircraft support. You could also run the 5.7 lineup with the M18, the Sherman Mark V, and then some other stuff as well. The Breda is a pretty decent tank destroyer, or you could go a little bit higher. I would say the 7.7 lineup is pretty good for the Italians, because even though 8.3 is a pretty meta BR right now because of the T55AM, you can still deal with them in an up tier. You know, you have the OF40, which has great optics. It has also access to some stuff you don't normally see at 7.7, such as a laser rangefinder, has access to a really good heat FS shell, has access to good speed, good mobility. It's basically the Fat Leopard. Then you have the R3 T106 and also the M47 as backup, and the main one is the F84G though, because this F84G is able to, as you can see, carry bombs and also carry a lot of rockets, and I haven't even got all of the things yet. As you can see, you can carry a ton of rockets with this thing, or you can carry 2,000 pound bombs and a ton of rockets as well. 24 rockets and 2,000 pounders. That sounds fun to me. So yeah, you basically spawn in either the R3, go cap a zone, try and kill something, then get an F84, dominate the game from the air, or you do the OF40 and actually play properly. So I would say this lineup's pretty fun. The French, there aren't many lineups that I'm actually looking at with the French and thinking about using. The lineup I used to use was the Jumbo lineup, which you still can use, but it's a little bit higgledy-piggledy nowadays because of the fact that they put up the Jumbo. If they didn't put up the Jumbo, then yes, I would still use this lineup, but now we're dragging up a ton of stuff. Like the SA50 can definitely be up-tiered effectively. The AMX-13 DCA is still a good vehicle. The P63C5 is one of the best ground aircraft in ground realistic, because it gets 2 bomb drops with 2 500s and 1 500. Then it gets the 37, which is really dangerous, and also is just really good at the multi-role thing that we've talked about before. So yeah, I mean, the lineup's okay, but as I said, because you're getting up-tiered now, I don't think the Jumbo is good enough by itself to do everything. If you have the ARL-44 with it, I suppose you could do that, but the ARL-44 isn't a fun or great vehicle to use, really. Like, it's got a good gun, but that's about it. It's the size of a house, it's got quite a long reload, and also the fact that it's a tank destroyer, so it doesn't get access to artillery for some reason. Why don't tank destroyers get artillery? I don't understand. And for Sweden, when it comes to Sweden, the only lineup that I can envision is the 401. Basically, you run the PVKV2, which is still massively under-tiered. It's an incredibly good vehicle with the gun that it has, the gun depression it has, the gun reload it has. The only thing that it's susceptible to is planes. Everything else it deals with handedly. Then you run it with the PVKV M43, which also has a very good gun on it. It's a little bit more defensive, the vehicle, but you can just hold corners and twat shit. And then the L62 as well. Using this lineup at 4.0, it does mean that you stay away from the 5.3s, 5.7s that you see, which will be commonly used during this event, so, you know, you don't have to worry about them. And also, the other thing is that you can bring along the J21s, or you can bring along the J26 if you want to up BR yourself a little bit, but you can bring along the T18 and the J21 or the A21. Both of these can work really well at that BR. They're incredibly nice vehicles. The other lineup I suppose you could maybe do is the 6.7 one with the IKV-91, the STRV-81. The IKV-91 is under-tiered right now, so that's a pretty good vehicle. And you could also go for the top tier lineup if you have it, because that's obviously an incredibly strong lineup at 10.0, so you could go and smash face. But I don't know, Sweden when it comes to its lineups has a little bit of issues, kind of like Japan does. So yeah, it's kind of hard to craft one which would be good for this event. Anyway, that is generally what I'm going to be playing for Operation Summer. It may deviate a little bit when I'm actually playing, but just understand that if you want to see me playing this stuff, I will be live on Twitch during the whole of Operation Summer, making sure to do all of the challenges alongside all of you. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd like to thank Ambrosius McClellan, B. Young, Battling Bacon, Blackie, Chris Giltnane, Conte Baraka, Daniel Stanton, Elove Goat, Jay Wilt, Martinez, Trigger Hippie, Universe, Eugens Terry, and also A. I'm Devilish and Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.